Let's play Bible Trivia Jeopardy. Here are today's categories: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, and the Crimson Thread. And as you can tell, all of these categories today are books of the Bible, and that's because we are currently in a Bible binge series, and you've caught video number 1, where we're going to go through all the books of the Bible, 5 questions for each book of the Bible. And then we're going to end each game with the Crimson Thread, showing how Jesus is interweaved into all of these books. All right, YouTube family, let's kick this Bible binge series off, and let's grow. Starting with the book of Genesis. In the beginning, God created these 2 vast domains that encompass all of existence. What are the heavens and the earth? This opening verse establishes God as the pre-existent creator of all matter. The Great Flood was precipitated by rain that fell upon the earth for this specific iconic duration. What is 40 days and 40 nights? Noah, his family, and the animals were preserved within the ark during this judgment. Abraham discovered this animal caught by its horns in a thicket, providing a substitute for his son Isaac. What is a ram? This event led Abraham to name the site Jehovah Jireh, meaning the Lord will provide. This ornate garment, a gift from Jacob to his favorite son Joseph, fueled the murderous jealousy of his brothers. What is a coat of many colors? Scholars often translate this as a long-sleeved robe or a richly ornamented tunic. After successfully interpreting Pharaoh's dreams of cows and grain, this Hebrew prisoner was elevated to vizier. Who is Joseph? He managed Egypt's resources to survive a devastating 7 years famine. And that takes us to the book of Exodus, starting with question number 1. God first summoned Moses from within this botanical phenomenon that burned with fire but was not consumed. What is a burning bush? Moses was commanded to remove his sandals as the ground he stood upon was holy. Moses stretched out his staff to perform this miracle, creating a dry path for Israel to escape the Egyptian army. What is parting the Red Sea? The Egyptian chariots were subsequently destroyed when the waters returned to their place. On the heights of Mount Sinai, Moses received these 10 fundamental laws inscribed by the finger of God. What are the 10 commandments? They were kept inside the Ark of the Covenant within the tabernacle's Holy of Holies. This mysterious bread from heaven appeared on the dew each morning to sustain the Israelites in the wilderness. What is manna? The name itself comes from the Hebrew manhu, which literally means, what is it? Last question from the category of Exodus. These 2 mysterious objects were placed in the high priest's breastpiece to help determine the will of God. What are the Urim and the Thummim? Their names roughly translate to the lights and perfections, or innocence. Next category is Leviticus. This chapter provides the kosher dietary laws, famously forbidding the consumption of this hoofed animal. And that's in Leviticus chapter 11. What is a pig or swine? The laws distinguish between clean and unclean animals for the nation of Israel. On the Day of Atonement, the high priest confessed Israel's sins over this animal before sending it into the wild. What is the scapegoat? This symbolized the physical removal of the people's transgressions from the camp. This famous command, often quoted by Jesus, tells the Israelites to treat their fellow man in this specific way. That comes from Leviticus 19:18, and that is, what is love your neighbor as yourself? This verse is considered the ethical heart of the holiness code in Leviticus. $400 question from Leviticus. These two sons of Aaron were consumed by fire after offering strange or unauthorized fire before the Lord. Who are Nadab and Abihu? This event underscored the absolute necessity of the following God-specific instructions for worship. Occurring every 50 years, this holy year required the release of slaves and the return of all ancestral property. What is the year of Jubilee? It was intended to prevent permanent poverty and the accumulation of massive land wealth. That takes us to the book of Numbers, starting with question number 1. During a journey to curse Israel, this man's donkey was miraculously given a voice to rebuke him. Who is Balaam? An angel of the Lord stood in the path with a drawn sword, which only the donkey could see at first. Returning from Canaan, the spies carried a cluster of these so large it required 2 men and a pole to transport it. What are grapes? The spies reported that the land flowed with milk and honey, but was inhabited by giants. Moses crafted an image of this animal out of bronze and set it on a pole so that those bitten by snakes could live. What is a serpent? Jesus later referenced this event as a prophetic shadow of his own crucifixion. Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses because he had married a woman from this specific region. What is Cush, or Ethiopia? As a result of her grumbling, Miriam was temporarily struck with leprosy. Last question from the category of Numbers. To confirm Aaron's divine authority, his staff miraculously produced these 3 things overnight. What are buds, blossoms, and almonds? The staff was later kept inside the Ark of the Covenant as a testimony. That brings us to the book of Deuteronomy. This central prayer of Judaism begins with the words, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one." What is the Shema? It is traditionally recited twice a day by devout Jews and is the first prayer taught to children. Next question. Because of his disobedience at Meribah, Moses was allowed to see the promised land from this mountain, but not enter. What is Mount Nebo? Moses died there at the age of 120, and the Bible states that God himself buried him. Moses reminded the people that man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from here. What is the mouth of the Lord? Jesus famously quoted this verse when he was tempted by the devil in the wilderness. $400 question from the book of Deuteronomy. God warned that the future kings of Israel should not multiply these three specific things for themselves. What are horses, wives, and gold or silver? This warning was later ignored by King Solomon, leading to his spiritual decline. Before his death, Moses laid hands on this man to be his successor and lead the people into Canaan. Who is Joshua? God commanded him to be strong and courageous as he took over the leadership. All right, that takes us to our next category, which is a special category, and it is specifically going to ask questions of how Jesus relates to each of the books that we just covered. So the correct answer to every category will be one of the 5 books that we just covered. Let's go ahead and get started. First question from the Crimson Thread. In this book, Jesus is both the unblemished, once-for-all sacrificial offering and the great high priest who bridges God and man. What is Leviticus? Every single animal sacrifice and ritual in this book was a temporary placeholder pointing to Christ's final, perfect atonement. $200 question from the Crimson Thread. In this book, Jesus is the seed of the woman promised to crush the serpent's head, and also the true Isaac provided by God on Mount Moriah. What is Genesis? In Genesis chapter 3, verse 15, it contains the very first gospel proclamation. Isaac carrying the wood up the mountain perfectly mirrors Christ carrying the cross, which happens to take place on the exact same mountain. $300 question. In this book, Jesus is the prophet like Moses, raised up by God, and our ultimate city of refuge where the guilty find ultimate safety. What is Deuteronomy? Deuteronomy chapter 18, verse 15 prophesies as a coming prophet. Christ also fulfills the cities of refuge by protecting believers from the penalty of death. $400 question. In this book, Jesus is the flawless Passover lamb whose blood averts the judgment and the struck rock that yields life-giving water. What is Exodus? Paul explicitly states in 1 Corinthians 10:4 that the rock was Christ. His blood on the doorpost mirrors the cross. Last question from the Crimson Thread. In this book, Jesus is the bronze serpent lifted up on a pole for healing and the prophetic star out of Jacob. And that would be, what is Numbers? In John chapter 3, verse 14, Jesus explicitly uses Numbers 21 bronze serpent account to explain exactly how he would be lifted up on the cross. Hope you enjoyed that category, and now that takes us to Final Jeopardy, where our question or our theme for this question is going to be ancient monarchy. So I'm going to give you a moment if you're calculating your scores and you want to determine how much you want to wager on ancient monarchy. Go ahead and pause now, but we are going to go ahead and continue right now. This mysterious king of Salem and priest of God Most High met Abraham after a battle, feeding him bread and wine. Let's see what you got. And that answer, who is Melchizedek? Melchizedek is introduced as the king of Salem, which translates to peace, making him literally the king of peace. All right, I really hope that you enjoyed this very first game of the binge series of Bible Jeopardy. If you're ready to go ahead and take the next challenge for the next books of the Old Testament, then go ahead and click on this link on the left. If you want to take a little break and focus on a great way to share the gospel message, which explains the entire purpose of life using an arrow and a cup of water, then I highly encourage you to click on the link here where it says, "What is the purpose of life?" And if you want to go ahead and skip around to the other books of the Bible that are part of this series, then go ahead and click on this playlist and you can jump forward and backwards as your heart's content. I do want to thank you for playing. Appreciate you being a part of this ministry. And until next time, be blessed, be a blessing. I be out. Boop.